Hello, everyone. I hope you're all safe and well. My name is Pedram Danesh-Mand, and I'm a director with KPMG Australia, and also helping your lecturer on this subject. It's my pleasure delivering this short presentation to you today. As you're probably aware, to further support the students undertaking the subject of Advanced Project Risk Management 15317, a number of additional online training material have been developed. These short targeted presentations will help you to better identify and understand the key aspects of this topic for your further studies. However, I would like to highlight that please note these materials should be only used as a supplementary, not as a replacement for full training documents and references which have been already provided for this subject. Hence, please refer to the university's course online platform or contact your lecturer to access and discuss full set of training material for this subject. In addition, I'm also happy to support you if you do have any questions or any clarification or any reference to other documents. Please send me an email and I will get back to you on that. Okay. So let's start today's discussion. The topic for today is the contingency controls. As you can see on the screen, we do have a number of sessions available as part of the supporting you on this subject of contingency management. We do have a couple of case studies. Session 2 is related to the risk and contingency management, very overall, just high level, the process. We do have a session for schedule contingency calculation and also the cost calculation, cost contingency calculation. Session 5 is related to the contingency allocation for both schedule and cost. And today's discussion is about the contingency controls. Before we get into the discussion, a quick introduction. I'm a civil engineer from background. I did my first master in design, hydraulic, and designing infrastructure within which they might have some interfaces with hydraulics, like bridges or pipelines or SAD or that sort of complex infrastructure. But it took me probably about 20 years ago, 18 years ago, 20 years ago, I got interested in terms of the application of risk management into delivering major projects. And that's, I did my second master in quantitative risk assessments and using the risk engineering in developing and delivering major projects. And I'm helping over the last probably 15 years. I was mainly working with the tier 1 contractors and government agencies to properly identify the risk and also do the risk assessment and helping the risk engineering to support the decision-making processes for those projects. Before we discuss about the topic today, I need to highlight that anything that I will share with you today, it's my own personal views. I mean, unless there are some scenarios that I refer to the guideline or guide note and it's clearly it's referring to those references, but generally they do have a nature of general nature and should not be used for any decision making. And also it's important that I'm not representing the official policy position or recommendation of KPMG Australia, Engineers Australia, or Risk Engineering Society. With that brief introduction, let's get into the topic. However, before we get into the contingency control, I would like to take you, just in case you haven't done previously the other sessions, I would like to take you a few minutes, take you through the relationship between the contingency control and project management, risk management. And I was just trying to explain how these things are connected. So when you're reading the full documents, it will help you to better understand the dependencies between those topics. What you do see on the screen is the three pillars of risk management based on the ISO 31000, which is the latest edition in 2018. And the document is putting the framework, which is mainly around the leadership and commitment from designing risk management, implementing, evaluating, improving, and integration of risk into the organization. The second part, or the pillar, is the principles, which is, you see the number of items that they're mainly related to creating value for the organization and protecting value. I've seen, personally, I've seen many examples that the risk management in organization became like a tick box rather than creating the value and protecting the value and helping the organization to achieve objectives. And that's not the right way to do it. This is what we want to do, is that we would like to create value and we protect the value. So on the last one, which is the third pillar, is the process of risk management process, explaining how what the scope of the project, risk management is, what's the context, how do we develop a context, what's the risk assessment, and so on and so on. A wide range of steps involved in the project risk management. And as part of it, there is a risk treatment, which is what needs to be done if the risk is not acceptable. And then concurrently, there is a communication, monitoring and review, reporting and recording. So what happens, how does it work? How does it relate to the contingency? And the problem is, if after the post-treatments, if the residual risk still is not acceptable and further treatment is not visible or is not practical, you might need to have some contingency allowances. It might be time or it might be cost. And that's how the concept of contingency will be linked with the risk management. In terms of contingency, I think we just explained what the contingency is. I just would like to highlight a couple of very fundamental items. Like, I do see a lot of cases that people actually try to use the contingency as a replacement for a proper cost estimate. That shouldn't be the case. You need to use all the information available and try your best to develop a proper cost estimate for the phase of the project that you're in. Then contingency is on top of the cost estimation. It's exactly the same for the schedule. You need to aim to develop the most likely, most credible scenario for the base schedule and base estimate before you start to have a conversation about contingency. The second one is that the contingency should not be included in the base estimate in the budget. I do see a lot of scenarios that when you look at the numbers, when you look at the schedule, you realize that different teams, they started to put different fats or different allowances or contingencies in different places. By the time they put them together, it will come to the top level. And the top level is putting another contingency on top of those contingencies. So you ended up having an overestimated cost estimate or schedule, which is not the optimum. The other one is that if there are some sort of events that they're highly likely to occur, and the highly likely is the scenario that, like for example, and there is no rule, right? But I usually, if there is anything that it does have a likelihood more than 80%, I usually recommend people that take it out from contingency modeling and put it as part of the base estimate or base schedule. And the last but not the least is that the contingency should not or does not include the escalation. The document that's for this topic, we refer to it, and a free complimentary copy of this guideline, the contingency guideline, is available to you as well. Please refer to it. And the document is a guideline that the RES started to develop from 2013. The first edition was published in 2016, and the second edition was released in 2019. And the document is quite, in my view, it's quite a very very good document. It doesn't have all the answers, but actually, as you can see, I was just trying to put the table of content there. It provides a good range of options and the structure around the key topics on this subject. So it's quite a good document as a starting point. The document, the guideline, puts the process in terms of the contingency into three portions. One is the determination. In other words, how much contingency is enough and optimum. That's one. Contingency allocation is where and who owns, in terms of where do you put that money, and where it might be vertical or horizontal. If you haven't watched that video, we do also have a session for allocation. So it's a horizontally and vertically. But the key question is, who owns how much and where do you put that money or time? That's the whole purpose of allocation. And the last but not the least, which is the subject of today, is contingency control. And obviously we do have the monitoring and reporting, which goes around a circle. But on that brief introduction, is actually will give us the time to have a look in the contingency control. One of the key items, and I think that's part of the contingency allocation that we discussed, is the production or producing the performance measurement baseline. Because put it this way, when you identify, when you determine or calculate the contingency, the next question is, where do you put that money? Do you want to keep it at the end? Do you want to split it and do it pro rata based on the month by month? Do you want to do it based on the pro rata, based on the expenditure, based on the direct cost, and so on and so on? So there's a wide range of different ways that you can allocate. And fundamentally is important because you need to set the performance measurement baseline. From a controls perspective, you need to set the performance measurement baseline reasonably, otherwise the progress report doesn't provide the reasonable result. In terms of, and that's at the earliest stage of the delivery phase. When it comes to the setting the assessing the confidence level, this is the other element that the new risk-based project controls is trying to measure regularly. And my personal recommendation is that on a quarterly basis, in addition to the traditional project controls like having the cost report, having the schedule, checking the actuals, checking the change orders, variation orders, and so on, it's important to assess and measure the confidence level. Generally, when contractors we start the project, we are sitting on the 60% or above in terms of the confidence level. There is a possibility that the projects, because of a number of reasons like variations or changes or any other reasons, delays, procurement, the confidence level goes down and down and down. And the concept is generally it takes time that when the confidence level gets to very, very low levels like 30% or 40%, this is the time that the people will look at it, they go to the site and they said, oh, it's not practical. It's very unlikely that you can achieve the completion date or target budget. But the problem is at the time you get there, it's too late. It's actually, and a good example that I usually refer people to is that, and I'm sure you have seen it as well, some of you probably have seen it, is that you look at the progress report, the projects that had some issues, and you see green, 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 amber, red. And the difference between amber and red, in many cases, is only 1 month or 2 months. And I was asked, I am asked many times that how it's possible that the difference between amber and red it's only a month or 2 months. And I usually say this is not the case. Actually, the reality is by the time the traditional project controls gives you amber, it's actually the end of amber. So my recommendation usually to people with executive is that if you see the amber, it's actually, you treat it as a red, because this is the end of amber. Next month, you're getting into the red zone. The challenge or the opportunity for contingency or confidence level is that you can actually identify the start of amber. In my experience, this difference in terms of the time, if we can identify this problem early, in my experience, this can be as long as 6 to 9 months for some of our major projects. And that's quite valuable because you can identify, if you can identify a problem 6 months earlier for major projects, that's a huge opportunity because you can actually interfere, you can get into it, do something different, try to talk to different people, having different scenarios, and it's quite valuable to do that. In terms of, and that's part of that's really the core part of the contingency control, just assessing the scenarios. And you have seen, I mean, if you look at the number of other references, like the one that I do have, the risk guideline is referring to the change control, and it's important that change control and contingency control, they link together. So if you identify the change, then you need to have a process in place. And I said, is that something that the scope changed? Is that we didn't plan for it and it does happen? Or we identify that and it happened. And depending on those different scenarios, there are different actions and different process that eventually can help you to do that. The other concept that I would like to highlight is, and we just discussed it a few minutes ago, is that the confidence level. And I think if you refer to the conversation here, this is the concept that we are talking about. Is the confidence level. Is that how confident we are that we can finish the project on time and within the budget and the methodology that we do have. And I think this is mainly important in terms of the allocation of contingency, but eventually the allocation and controls, they work together quite strongly. So please be noted that if you're not allocating the contingency appropriately and properly, then the control of contingency doesn't really work that well. So the allocation and control, that they should work together quite strongly. Let's have a quick look in the time available, the remaining time available to us. Let's have a quick look in the case study, which I think it might be useful. This is the project that I was working on it a few years ago, $100 million power plant of EPC, engineering, procurement, construction. The scope obviously did cover the project management, the design, procurement, and installation, which was a wide range of civil, electrical control system, and BOP, as well as the testing and commissioning. One of the challenges that we did have during project was that, are we confident enough? And that's a question that's during the delivery, during execution phase, we were asking ourselves on a monthly basis, and at least on a quarterly basis. We're just saying that we need to quantify that. Are we confident enough that we will finish the project on time and within the budget? And that's the whole purpose of the confidence level. Let me give you an example of one of the reports that we did. And some of the numbers, they're not, we're just trying to use them and change them a little bit, but just wanted to make sure that you get the concept. So when you look at here, in the traditional, and this is one of the monthly reports, the traditional project controls, if the progress is 50%, the available contingency is about 1.1 million. So we had some, initially we had the budget, we spent it a little bit. Currently, let's say 6 months down the track, we are during the construction. The available contingency is about 1.1 million. And the KPI progress in terms of, because we have done the progress, we have done contingency available, and you get the green, right? However, the way we approach it from a risk perspective, exactly the same scenario. We see the progress is 50%, the available contingency is 1.1. But when we look at the risk for the remaining work and all the trends and everything into the picture, for the desired level of confidence level, that we initially won the job, which was for 80% confidence level, we said the contingency that we would like to have is 1.9 million for the level, the same level of confidence level that when we won the job, compared to now, we need $1.9 million. And immediately you realize that there is a gap of 800K because you only have 1.1 million. You need 1.9 million, and that's the 800K negative. And that negative will give you the KPI, the progress of Amber. So you can see how the risk-based project controls is different. So what is telling us is that you started to get into the Amber space and zone, and is not in the green. So your traditional progress report might have the green, but the new way of risk-based project controls is giving you the amber. So it's actually highlighting the problem. And that's part of the control, contingency control. On that basis, I hope you found it useful. As I highlighted initially, this short training materials, they're only here to help you to identify the key areas of concern. And I strongly recommend that you need to refer to the full guideline or some of the full details training material. Just make sure that you fully understand the concept. My email contact details there. Please, and also as I said earlier, if you would like to be connected to RES group on LinkedIn or myself, please send an email, an invitation, and definitely happy to help you. Good luck with your studies, and until the next time. Thanks. Bye.